Today we're going to talk about a film that just came out a couple of years ago. Actually, I noticed Jacob's Ladder, 2019, right?
Oh no, we're going to talk about the original.
Oh, okay.
The original. Hope you didn't watch the remake. Oh, whoa!
I'll see you in 2 hours. All right, now that's done.
Now that you watched the original.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and today we're talking about a horror movie that deals with spirituality.
Let's break right into it. Jacob's Ladder.
Yes.
1990 Jacob's Ladder.
Yeah. All right.
Jacob Singer suffers from PTSD from his time in Vietnam, suffering from his crumbling marriage at home and the persistent pain stemming from the loss of his child. As Jacob tries to put his life back in order, he keeps seeing things that aren't there, or are they? Jacob tries to uncover the truth behind his visions that go all the way back to a horrific day during his deployment.
Okay, so this is an interesting horror movie because it comes at the end of the 80s slashers. I mean, how many Nightmare on Elm Streets do we have by 1989? So we're kind of almost exhausted with the slasher genre. I think it ran its cycle probably by 1989. It's just got comical.
Oh yeah, speak for yourself.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
Well, the whole motorcycle and Nightmare on Elm Street inside. So you have something to kind of really dial back of what is really horror. And I think it's not so much the aesthetic of slashing and blood and guts, but you have something that goes inward, which is maybe you're going to hell.
Yeah.
Slowly going to hell. Or maybe the environment is maybe you're losing your mind. It's that psychological element that I think was missing in a lot of 80 horror movies. That makes it, this movie came out in 1990, a little bit refreshing.
So when I watched this movie, and this is going to be a spoiler talk of this film, it's impossible to talk about this film without diving into what it is.
Oh yeah, go back and
so
see
just
it.
know that. Go watch the film like I just did, and then come back and talk about it. When I watched this film last night, I didn't know how to feel. I was positive on the movie, but I wasn't sure like how positive. I had to go to sleep and think about it because
For your first
this
reaction.
kind of movie is a movie that will not work for everyone. It is a movie that some people will love and some people will hate. And so me finishing off this movie, I don't like particular movies where they tend to be the whole thing was a dream, the whole thing wasn't real. And that was kind of like, I was like, I liked this movie, but something about that bothered me. I went to sleep. I woke up this morning and I was like, no, that was really good. That was really good. And part of it is because I had to think to myself about the fact that all of the stuff happening in this movie has an unreality to it, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen in his mind. It's a character story as opposed to a plot story. Kind of similar to how I really enjoyed Holy Motors, was that the unreality of it is still telling a story.
Yeah.
And that was something I just had to think about for like 12 hours. And I'm glad I did, because if I had watched this right before you came over, like I did.
So it's not really a linear film. It's kind of a stream of consciousness. James Joyce did that with Finnegan's Wake. It's a stream of consciousness where it doesn't really break up. You don't know where the ending is, don't know where the beginning is, but you have certain elements of, he gets his back broken, takes in the hospital. All of a sudden, he had this torture. How do we get in this torture chamber? Or where are we going from here? So it's a lot of this stream of consciousness onto film that I think people are like, wait a minute, what am I watching? Not to mention he's flipping back between relationships and stuff. So you're trying to understand, where is the linear component? There is no linear component to this.
The character is the linear component. And so the confusion is that way too.
So it's very, I would say, if you're trying to find clarity, you have to watch what the whole movie's about at the end. I think the ending, the final ending, you're like, oh, now I get it. And that makes the enticement. Maybe watch a little more to see interesting, what did I miss? But you have to be very careful how to watch this movie. It's not a popcorn movie where you can shut your brain off. You have to kind of sit and digest it because there's certain things that you'll miss.
Yeah, every scene is important to what it does to Jacob, but not every scene has narrative quality. Yeah. In that, like, again, this is what the movie is. Like, that's the intention of the film. So that's kind of where you have to understand. Yeah. It's a movie, I think, that you almost do get a caveat for. That when someone tells you about it, they should tell you this is a character journey kind of a movie. Because you do have to prep yourself mentally for what you're going to subject yourself to. The screenplay was written in 1980. Bruce Joel Rubin.
Yeah, go back and look at his life. That was a trip.
Yeah, so he spent a couple years at a Tibetan Buddhist place.
Yeah, he did the whole Brad Pitt thing, 7 years in Tibet.
Yeah, and so he and the thing is, he's very clearly been throughout his life influenced by the afterlife, influenced by what happens.
He's been on his spiritual journey since the 60s. Yeah.
He's written screenplays like Brainstorm. He's written things like Deadly Friend, the Wes Craven film. He wrote Ghost. That was after this one. And then, of course, he wrote this film. So he's been always kind of curious with that afterlife quality, what happens when we die. And I think what we get here, and according to even him, is a 2-hour in real time movie. The movie begins with the bayoneting and it ends after they can't resuscitate him. And everything in the middle is happening in his mind during that time period. And when you think of it in that way, it makes it all the more fascinating. This is a movie that's more fun to watch the special features and the people discussing the movie after you've seen it, because you just want to hear what do you think, or what was your intention with this, or what's going on.
Yeah,
it's got
this
great
is what I
layers.
like about movies is you have almost like Inception, kind of what's your interpretation, because movies should have always that element of dream quality sense to it. That it's almost that what Brad Bird says. It's not in between of you're not really asleep, but you're not really awake. It's that slipstream that we try to capture with movies. And that's what I like about it. There's a sense of a dream quality to this, but also a sense of real, gritty, very realism to this. It looks dirty. Now, the reason for that is because even though it was made in 1990, Bruce Joel Rubin wrote this screenplay as something that takes place in the late 70s. So he has this retro look to it, this film. The styles and everything. The music is even almost retro. So even though it's made in 1990s, it has the aesthetic of living late 70s, where New York City was complete. You had garbage problems of unions and stuff, so it was very trashy at the time.
Well, and what I thought about that, though, is that he gave the film a semi-timeless look.
Adrian Lyne?
Adrian Lyne did.
Oh, yeah.
Gave the film a semi-timeless look, and I think part of that is because if we really want to get, just flat facts about it, the movie is set in 1971. The scene in Vietnam is 1971, and if everything going through his head as he's dying is his interpretation of what home is like. So even if it's been 10, 20, 30 years since he's returned home in his mind, it will always look like 1971 New York, look like 1971 in this home, because that is where his mind has stopped on this trek. That's why he continues to see his son as the same age that he was when he died.
The oldest.
So it's that really confusing level of everything he perceives is real, but it's not actually happening in real life.
So, when I say it's a battle of spirituality, you have a lot of themes of, even when he's on the subway, I'm talking about hell, they're going down the basements, and you have very dark themes to this, not to mention, I think you have difference between the two female characters of, Jezebel and his wife, very different to principle. Maybe you're going to hell, this point of view, maybe you're not going to hell. So it's very ornate Christian value kind of a thing.
Which is funny because
Judeo-Christian.
Lynn took away all Christian elements to the film. The screenplay had hooved creatures, horned creatures.
Yeah.
And I think during the part with the gurney going deeper and deeper into the
which is
the
fascinating.
morgue, was originally going to be an open doorway to hell. Was that he was going to be seeing a hellscape with creatures and stuff like that in Rubin's script. And Lynn said, "We've seen that. I don't want to see that." He goes, every creature effect, every unreality thing that happens in the film needs to be somewhat confusing or something that you're not 100% seeing. And most of that worked for me. The shaky cam thing with the guys' faces and stuff like that.
Or in their car.
The only part of it I didn't love. Oh, yeah, the car one. Oh, the car thing is so creepy and weird. It looked like the Thing creature. Yeah. The only time where I wish I would have seen a little bit more, and this is, again, I like creature effects, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of the devil and Jezebel dancing at the party. Because so much of it is done with the strobe light, I feel like I'm constantly searching for answers. I know it's what Lynn's going for, but it was frustrating that I didn't get to see a creature at the end of that.
But because what happened is, and I think Adrian's very effective at this. Now, Adrian is part of the camp of Ridley Scott, Michael Mann, and Alan Parker, and the effective use, especially work with commercials. We talked about it before, but the effective you don't. I'm not seeing that right, and he shoots it very paranoid, where you get scenes of just fast cuts, doom, and you get doom, 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 to the point that the only time to really focus camera-wise or hold the scene is you see the psychotic break of Jacob at the dancing. So it's almost like back where you couldn't really. Did I see that right? Is there a tail there? Or the claws and everything? But he cuts it very, very knife-like, very slicing. But there's also very things that you might forget you see, because there's when he's strapped down in the chair, or I'm losing my mind, but somebody in the background goes, "You're going to die." Where'd that come from? You forget that's in the movie. So there's a lot of soft elements that are you mentally breaking down.
Yeah. And there's the
Not to
Ruben's
mention
script
harsh
has
elements.
that.
Yeah.
Ruben's script is all about like what we're going through as we pass from this life to what's after. And I think it's interesting when he goes through every single character that he created, what they're supposed to represent in the film. And I like that, like they talk about Jesse, Elizabeth Pena's character, as being like the embodiment of, Ruben said, when we're dying, it's not like our sexuality goes away, but we're experiencing all the sexuality at once. Like we're experiencing like every person we've ever wanted.
That's an interesting point of view. Okay.
And so the way that Jacob recognizes Jesse from work, before he'd even, like, there was never that relationship, but he recognizes her from work, and so as he's dying, he's experiencing all the sex he didn't have as he's going through, all the stuff he's missing with his wife. When you get Danny Aiello's character Louis is the wisdom.
Oh,
the
Danny's
father
the best
figure.
part of one of the best parts of the movie. Is
Well,
Danny,
he's great because he delivers lines that could be really cheesy or really silly, but he's like an exposition machine.
I've seen this many times.
You know?
I still love when he screams, "This is barbaric."
Oh yeah. I just love that scene. The last scene Louis is in, where he's kind of giving him this like, like you could view it as you're being taken away from here, or you can view it as you're being saved from here to what's next. And that's why I think, as much as this film rides like a 98% horror, there's 2% hope at the end, which is such a weird way to end a horror movie, but it fits what this movie's going for.
Yeah.
Seeing the ladder at the end, seeing his son being reunited with his son is a beautiful moment that we just spent 2 hours going insane for. It's such an odd movie, but yeah, it's captivating to say the least.
All right, so Kyle brought up the element of sex, which it doesn't hit you over the head with it.
No, none of it
It's
does.
very
Yeah.
subtext is the element of sex, which is surprising because Andrew Lin, primarily throughout all his other movies, sex is the core theme throughout the movies. So he's done Flashdance, 9.5 Weeks, Fatal Attraction, Indecent Proposal, Lolita, Unfaithful. This is kind of the only movie he's ever done where sex is not the dominant theme throughout the films, even though you just laid out that some of it is peppered in it, which is interesting for an Adrian Lin movie because usually it's at the core and let's work around it.
And I think there's a film, I think it's Dark Water, his most recent film, just came to Hulu this year, Ben Affleck and Ana de Armas. And it's an erotic, like, thriller kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So, like, still not done making those kinds of movies, but I didn't even see it that way until you put it in context with that onslaught of sex movies, like, where it's like, yeah, that's kind of the plot device in every one of his movies. And it's interesting that most of the sex-related elements to this film
Are not really...
Well, they came from Ruben's script, not from Lin's direction. And it's not pervasive. It's not all the movie. It's just, it's an important element of the film.
Okay, another interesting point is Adrian Lin was initially supposed to do Bonfire of the Vanities. He was in talks with Tom Hanks to get the piece going. And then the script was approached to him, and he decided to do Jacob's Ladder and turn away from Bonfire of the Vanities, and Brian De Palma would pick that up. But he tried to lure Tom Hanks to do Jacob's Ladder, and Tom Hanks was kind of like, is it like The Burbs? Are we doing like a comedy horror thing? And he's like, no, this is really dark themes.
Yeah.
Like, seriously. And Tom Hanks is like, I don't think people would understand me. I just come from comedy. I don't think it would work very well because people are like, where's the jokes? Where's the funny? I don't think it would work very well. Which is funny because that's the problem that's going to happen with him in Bonfire of the Vanities, where it was supposed to be a parody, but nobody's getting the jokes. Well, Tom Hanks in the movie.
It's further...
Just interesting sidebar.
It's furtherly ironic because Tim Robbins was essentially a comic actor before this film. Most of what he had done had been seen in at least a more lighthearted sense.
Yeah, Boulder and the Big Dumb Idiot, yeah.
And I this is not one that everyone else goes to. I always go to his portrayal in Howard the Duck. I think he's hilarious in the movie. But like everything he had done up until this point, he was not seen as a dark, brooding, serious actor, which is, if you read this script, you'd be thinking, I need a dark, brooding, serious actor. Right. So it's perfectly inspired that if you couldn't get Tom Hanks, you'd look at a Tim Robbins. Not something I would have ever thought about. And it's something, again, today if you were talking about let's say this movie was based on a book, like a really popular book, and they were going to make this into a movie, and they announced Tim Robbins was going to play the character, people on all the message boards would be like, they don't have the right actor for this. Like, this is not the, like...
You would get the memo, right? You'll get the phone call. Right.
It's inspired that they got Robbins.
I will go back, I really love the cinematography in this movie. Now, there's a lot of intimate scenes. There's scenes of just open looking at pictures and everything. That's very intimate part. But... the Vietnam shots is some of the best shots you'll see that you'll never talk about. I
Yeah.
mean, you talk Vietnam Wars, you talk about Platoon and Apocalypse Now with cinematography, but those couple minutes of just the helicopters,
Yeah.
this great cinematography. You even have the slow shot of the helicopter hovering, and it's slow. I still retain that shot, even though it has really not much to do with the movie.
Is that the one where there's like the two, like the one is like lower than the other, and they're kind
Well,
of like
it's that one
spinning
where
to each
it's
other?
almost like Singer's point of view of the helicopter
Oh,
after being
okay,
rescued,
yes.
and it's just hovering and it's staying, but they slow the action down. It's one of the few times where Adrian Lynch slows the action down because you still retain that helicopter is still hovering above and everything is going, but like, what the heck's going on?
Yeah, there's some great the thing is, there's like, Vietnam is so important to the film. It's such an important element throughout the movie, but it's really featured, like, again, 4 to 5% of the film is actually set during the deployment. You know, like, everything else is shot in a regular city, in a regular set. It's nice that stuff doesn't look bad, because it is such a small part of the movie that a lesser director may not focus on it. But if you can't make the Vietnam stuff look real, the whole movie, and I'm talking the whole movie story,
The authentic goes away.
yeah,
If it looks camp, yeah.
Seeing it at the end where you finally figure out that all this is taking place in Vietnam, really, in his mind. If you lose Vietnam, you lose the framing device, which loses the entire narrative structure. And that would be an absolute disaster.
Why I pointed out, because there's a lot of things you're not going to talk about with, especially with the cinematography of the movie, because there's a lot of just when the cityscape, there's just a lot of just shooting. It's not like, oh, that's a great shot. You're not going to talk about that, but with Vietnam, there's a lot of great shots with this. The cinematographer is Jeffrey L. Kimball. He would go do Top Gun, True Romance, Wild Things, and Stigmata. So he definitely has an authentic look for this film that you can retain. I like the Vietnam stuff. I like the ending to this. Not to mention the final act, the scene in the when he goes, he's the doctor now, and he goes into his penthouse. Excuse me, but yeah, look. It's still, I don't know if they ran the fog machine or whatever, but it still has an understanding because it looks hokey. If you think about it, well, we're going to use this stairwell as a metaphor to ascending to heaven. That's kind of,
Well, and apparently I think there was actually an assembled ladder. Like, there was a ladder that was going to be used in the film that he was going to go up at the end. And Lynn rewrote the scene, kind of went in and said, I think there needs to be a familial element. And Adrian Lynn was going back and speaking to the idea.
It's too on the nose.
Yeah, like the ladder would have been very much on the ladder, or else they said maybe a staircase, like a stairway to heaven kind of a staircase, where it was like really just some random staircase. Yeah. And he said, I think the audience, after sitting through this movie, needs the hope at the end that maybe someone you love is waiting to help you finish the job, help you get across the line. And I'll be honest with you, man, when that scene hit me really hard, because I thought to myself, like, you know, hopefully someone will be there to help me cross the line when the time comes, and especially knowing that, like, in some ways that Jacob's own son is now on the level where he can help introduce his father. Like, he's the father figure to Jacob now. Like, let me help you lift you up into this place. Wow, what an emotional scene. What a great ending for a movie that Adrian Lynn wrote just on the quick, like, people need this. And I'm like, yeah, we did, you know?
Yeah. And it's interesting. It's like we can kind of categorize Ghost as a horror movie. But this is definitely horror-esque. And then Adrian Lynn directing it.
Yeah.
And you think somebody that's done these almost erotic, salacious movies, like even Lolita, that he's doing this movie as well. And understands, though, what this movie needs, rather than I'm going to just put my staple on it.
Yeah.
Because there's still a lot of things that, like the cutting to editing of monsters and the very flash editing that you'll see a lot of those guys do, like Alan Parker and Ridley Scott. Of what did I see that? You open the fridge and you see that. What?
Yeah.
But you have a lot of all the women are super horny in this movie. He goes to the party and everybody wants to sleep with him. Horny. And I didn't think about this sexual component to this until you brought it up.
I did have a laugh, like, and I'll be real with you, watching the movie when Tim Robbins, the first scene that he's in with Jezzy, and he gets in the shower and she's like, you look like you need some help. And, like, she gets in, I was like, oh my. Right. Like, I was like, I felt like dirty.
But it's dirty. It's in a New York trashy apartment. It's like, doesn't really have an allure to it. Yeah. It's not really that erotic.
When it comes back to Adrian Lynn as the director, I don't know a lot of the background of the filming of his other movies, but from the stuff I read and the stuff I viewed on the excess of this film, seeing him direct the vulnerable scenes with Elizabeth Pena, the scene where she's dancing, gyrating, having sex with the devil in many ways, seeing how he interacted with her on the set of that makes me feel that, like, wow, he really, like, had a care for his actors, because he made a lot of sex movies.
Yeah.
So, like, I assumed this was how he dealt with all of them, but he had this whole thing where she asked if she could have someone in the devil suit that was someone she knew and someone she trusted, and he said, that's brilliant. Let's get someone in here that, like, that when they grab you and when they do this stuff to you, that, like, you still feel like, as an actress, that you're not being taken advantage of. And I was like, damn, like, he really did care about the people in his film. So even though he's making all these sex movies,
You have to have some kind of comfortable.
yeah, he had such a respect for the vulnerable people in the film, and I'm like, God, good for you, man. Like, that was really cool. So
Another fantastic thing about this is actually edited really well. It's not going to get any nominations because it's a horror movie, but Tom Rolfe, who did Taxi Driver, The Right Stuff, of course he did Heat,
yeah,
Black Sunday. It has one of those things is good editing, but you're not going to notice it.
Yeah.
But you have to cut back to make everything look smooth transitions without a little bit of like, what the hell? But also buy into it. Mm-hmm. And that's editing tough. I don't know if the script, you go by exactly how the script says it, but you understand you got to cut back to Vietnam, you got to cut back to the apartment, you got to cut back to his family life, you got to cut back to going to the mailman. Mm-hmm. And all of it seems a nice, smooth stream of consciousness kind of editing that I think is a tough challenge to do.
it is, because there is no real hard and true plot to the film. Like I said, it's a character movie. So it is about the character's internal plot, not scene by scene. Not every scene adds to plot, they all add to character. So, like, you have to have the understanding of being able to maneuver from this evolution of the character to this piece of the character. And part of that is including even things like more lighthearted fare to kind of, like, have fun. Yeah. I think of that scene where he's walking home and the women on the street, like, start singing Mr. Postman to him.
Yes.
It's such a lighthearted and a beautiful scene that, again, happens when we need it as viewers. We need it just enough to stop ourselves from diving into the dread. Because this movie skirts dread so much.
Yeah,
but it just pulls you back out every time. Right before we get that weird, the devil sex thing, he's getting his palm read, and it's kind of a cute moment between him and this palm reader before she says, this line says you're dead already. And it's like, oh, shit, now we're back into it again. It's constantly in and out of that.
My favorite is when he gets his back broken in the street, and then Santa Claus rips him off.
Rips him off, yeah.
And then the police are like, well, who ripped you off? Santa Claus.
Yeah.
Well, he is nuts. I mean, yeah.
It rides that line, though, again, because they're taking him, and then you're kind of like, oh, you poor thing. Because you know that, like, he is telling the truth. Santa Claus stole from him, but now they're assuming he's insane. So it's kind of that comedic but sadness, too. Like, the editing is so strong because it rides that tonal line as far as it can go. I found it interesting that this film had test screenings where the audience didn't like the last act, and eventually 20 minutes were cut out of the final act of the film.
Interesting.
And I'm curious to see that version of it, but I do wonder if that one might have just delved into too much. Might have delved into, like, oh, we've crossed the line now into, like, the audience isn't having fun watching anymore, you know?
I want to talk about a little bit of their surgery scene where he's strapped in the chair, because it's very interesting. It's shot complete black. I don't know, they probably paint the walls black, but it's almost your vulnerability. You're strapped in the chair. It's almost Clockwork Orange kind of a thing. But you have this, I think if you got the VH copy, it's the guy with no eyes.
Yep.
And it's kind of a metaphor of the guy who cannot see, but he's going to eviscerate where we always assume it's that spirituality where your third eye is. But he takes the needle and eviscerates that area. But of course, you get that scene, but screaming wise, it's typical Adrian Lynn, because that's the only scene where you hold the vulnerability. Yeah. Where the rest of it, the monsters, you get a little bit of like, did I see that right? Yeah.
I felt like, again, like that goes back to character journey, because I saw the guy with no eyes, and I saw it as a very literal like element of Jacob that is saying to him, you can't see it yet, but you are dead. Because the guy tells him you're dead, and then this character shows up who's like, you can't see it yet, let me open your mind. You know, let me inject something into your mind to open you up to what you're seeing. Yeah, Lynn's decision to use Elizabeth Pena's Jessie in that scene as well was not part of the script. But he said, because she's an element of your subconscious, you need to have her here. And you have to showcase that she wasn't going to help you, because she wasn't like the family. She wasn't the wife and kids.
Right, yeah.
You know, she is some who you don't really even know.
Yeah.
But
you
created her.
Confesses to his wife, it was a nightmare.
Yeah. Oh, man, what a mind F that scene is. When that happens 45 minutes into the movie and he wakes up in bed with his wife, I was like, wait, did the first 45... Like, again, not knowing where the movie was going to go, I was like... Was that all not real? Like, what's going to happen now? And then he wakes up again, and you're like, oh wait, okay, so that wasn't real. This is like, I love the puzzle of the movie.
Yeah,
so
yeah. And it's a great scene of him to get him in the bath, because he's running 106. Shot really well because he got the intimacy. But you almost shoot a point of view. They had to do the cameraman in the bathtub and everybody looking up.
Yeah.
And everybody in town pitching in. Yeah.
I was so angry during that scene for something completely like silly. And then it's all the people chucking ice at him. He got hit in the face with ice like 3 times during that scene, and it's like, that is not helping. You're chucking sharp ice at him the whole time.
What I think is intentionally to make it uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to look like
he's naked.
He's naked, but it's not supposed to look like a soft rescue. It is anxiety.
Yeah, it's his subconscious forcing him to move forward. Like forcing him to like wake up to what's going on.
And everybody holding you in a bathtub with ice water, and like, you need to chill out. That's not going to help.
Yeah, there was almost that Arnold Schwarzenegger like, chill. Like, I want to mention with that too, the number of people that are in this movie for one scene. Like big names, and this is always happens with this case, but big name people who show up in the movie for one scene. Pruitt. What's his name? Pruitt Taylor Vince, who is in his company. Eric LaSalle was in his company. Ving Rhames was in the company at the beginning.
And Jason
Alexander, George
who
Costanza,
has hair. He has hair.
2 scenes. But he he gets a lot to do with that. His doctor, when he wakes up after being in the ice bath, is Louis Black, the comedian. Looks very young, but he's in there. Kyle Gass from Tenacious D is one of the neighbors who's pouring ice water in the bath, but he looks very young. Esapatha Murkison is the palm reader. Like so many people
she's
just
from LA Law and Order. She's from Law and Order.
Scene. Yeah. And I know that happens when you have smaller actors.
And Eric LaSalle went on to do TV, and then we all know what happened to Ving Rhames after this.
Yeah, so it's just it made me giggle because every time I saw a person, I was like, that guy, this guy. It felt like
from TV.
Yeah,
this guy from there. Yeah. They're all babies. Yeah.
Yeah, they're all children in the movie. Of course, an uncredited Macaulay Culkin as well.
Right, Gabe.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how you're going to react to that, but if you didn't know it, because you're like, oh, that's him.
Yeah. I immediately, my mind went to My Girl, and I was like, not again.
Not again. So, have you seen Jacob's Ladder? My God, if you have seen it, it's one of those that you'll never forget you've seen it. It's unforgettable. There are some great scenes that make it memorable. I think it's personally, it's one of my top 10 favorite horror movies because I just like the messing with it. And it's refreshing flush from all the slash movies we saw from the 80s that we got a new avenue of something we haven't really seen a lot, in that psychological terror horror in cinema. It
was a movie of its time that was very different.
Came out the right time for the right kind of context.
Yeah, and going back even before we leave for the hopefulness of the ending, Adrian Lyne had people reaching out to him from the LGBTQ community after the film came out, asking if they could use scenes from the film to help their friends who are dying of AIDS to understand the process better and to cope with it. Yeah. And he said that was the most important thing to him, and that's nice. That was beautiful. Like I was like, and again, it's one of those things. A 98% horror movie with 2% hope at the end can really do a lot for people.
The only fourth shot in the movie is Danny Aiello, but it's with the halo light, right?
Yeah,
and it's like for Adrian Lyne, I go, that's very college filmmaking.
It didn't bother me at all.
But I understand why that needed to be forced later on, because it looked like, that's so stupid. Why'd you put that so directly in the shot? But then you understand why it needed to be in there as you follow the journey.
So much of the film is not giving you the answers, that it's nice that a scene does give you a very simple answer of it all.
It's great filmmaking, because I was like, that's a slip up.
Sometimes you need that answer,
Out loud, I said, God, that looks so amateurish. Why do you do that? Then you understand the movie as you watch why he did it intentionally.
So I will be revisiting this film come October. I need some time away from it before I do. But let us know your thoughts on Jacob's Ladder down below in the comments section. And maybe which Adrian Lyne film should we cover next? Because I've only seen Flashdance 9.5 weeks in this one. I've got a couple others in my collection that I need to open up. So let us know which one we should cover next.
He's not afraid to tackle difficult subjects.
Yeah, many times. So let us know what you thought about the film down below in the comments. And while you're down there, please like and subscribe. They don't cost you any pennies at all.
No.
And you can help support the channel at the same time. Support independent content creators if you enjoyed the show. And gosh, I hope you did. Please check out the like, subscription section and the Patreon as well. Tiers as low as $1, and you get Picks with Kyle and Nick. You get our Road to De Palma series. You get exclusive content. You get early episodes. As soon as they get finished, edited, and uploaded, they go right to that channel. So you can find that stuff early if you don't want to miss out on episodes or catch them all right now. You can do that. Thank you guys for joining us so much.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll see you next time for another Scary Movie Saturday. And until then, you can find my film reviews over at goatfilmreviews.com.
You can find my show, the St. Paul Filmcast, anywhere you find podcasts. So.
All right. Oh, what's that staircase doing there?